Hello, this is Caitlin from nutritionstudents.com, and in this episode, I will be looking at some of the basics of digestion. First, let's just do a quick overview of all of the basic components. The first part is the mouth, and then the esophagus, which leads to the stomach, and then the small intestine, which leads to the large intestine, also called the colon, and the last part is the anus, which is where the waste is excreted. The digestive system also has accessory organs, which are organs that kind of help out with this digestion process, and those include the tongue, salivary glands, the pancreas, the liver, and the gallbladder. The first part of digestion is ingestion, which is simply putting food in your mouth, and then your mouth chews the food and breaks it down. This is also called mastication. Your mouth mixes food with saliva, and saliva contains amylase, which breaks down carbohydrates and is called salivary amylase because it's from the saliva, and also lingual lipase, which breaks down lipids or fats. So your food is chewed up and mixed with the saliva and turns into a nice soft ball called a bolus, and this is ready to be swallowed. When you swallow your food, it moves into the esophagus, and the esophagus is a very muscular tube, and it uses peristalsis, which is coordinated contracting and relaxing, to move the food to your stomach, sort of like how you would squeeze a tube of toothpaste from the bottom. So it first squeezes in one place and moves the food down, and then in the next and moves it down farther until it reaches the stomach, and this can take a few seconds to happen. The stomach also uses peristalsis, but it does it in a slightly different way that's used to churn the food and mix it up. The stomach has some different enzymes. The first one is gastric lipase, which lipase is again used to break down lipids or fat, and gastric refers to the fats that's in the stomach. And the stomach also has pepsin for breaking down proteins. Now you'll notice that the stomach does not have any type of amylase, and this is because the environment in the stomach is too acidic for amylase to work. So there's basically no digestion of carbohydrates happening in the stomach. The stomach does have intrinsic factor, which is a very important component of vitamin B12 digestion. At the end of the stomach, there is a sphincter called the pyloric sphincter, and this opens up just a little bit at a time to let the food trickle into the small intestine. The small intestine also uses peristalsis, or the coordinated movement of the muscles, to move the food through it. It's a little bit different than in the other places, but nonetheless it's still peristalsis. The small intestine has three parts: the duodenum, jejunum, and the ileum, and food travels through in that order. The small intestine finishes up digestion, so it finishes breaking down the food, and most of the absorption happens in the small intestine, which is taking the nutrients out of the food and moving it into our body or into the bloodstream. The liver helps with this process by making bile, which is a very important component for fat digestion, and bile is stored in the gallbladder. And when there is fat in the small intestine, the gallbladder will secrete the bile into the small intestine to help with that fat digestion. The pancreas, which we can see back here, creates different enzymes and secretes those into the small intestine to help with digestion, and it makes pancreatic lipase, amylase, and protease. So that means it can help with the digestion of fats or lipids, carbohydrates, and protein. And that's how the small intestine is able to finish the digestion of all of the food. So after the food is finished moving through the small intestine, it goes into the large intestine or colon, which also uses peristalsis to move the food through it. And the large intestine has several different areas, which I'll just run through real quick. The cecum is the very first part, followed by the ascending, transverse, descending colon, and then this rounded part is the sigmoid, and the last part is the rectum. The colon or large intestine mainly serves to absorb the water that was not absorbed in the small intestine. And then it forms the stool from the waste, the things that we don't need for our body. And this stool is excreted out the anus. So that's the basics of digestion. I hope you enjoyed this video, and you can check out my website at nutritionstudents.com.